is vital here and throughout eastern Pennsylvania as it fuels our colleagues' ability to get to work, reduces barriers for individuals and families to obtain care, life-saving care. When you stand outside the doors of one of our hospitals, you're likely to see someone step out of a Lanta bus, a clinician who's coming here prefers not to drive their vehicle, a cancer patient too weak to drive, a community member who can't afford a ride share to get a specialist appointment. Reliable transportation is a key social determinant of health, and transportation should never be a barrier for somebody to be able to have access to good health. Jefferson, we are striving to be the most accessible health system in the country, and public transportation is an important part of that. We can only accomplish this by ensuring colleagues and our patients have easy, affordable transit and options to our care sites. Thank you. It's now my honor to introduce my friend and a fierce champion of healthcare and essential transit options, the great Governor Josh Shapiro.
Thanks, Joe. Thank you. Thank you. Joe, thank you very much. And it's great to be here at the Lehigh Valley Health Network and a wonderful example of Jefferson's reach here in the Lehigh Valley, all across our Commonwealth. And I want to just say a word about Joe and his team. They not only deliver outstanding quality health care here in the Lehigh Valley and across our Commonwealth, but they're also civic leaders and business leaders, and they give a damn about the community that they are in. And that is the spirit within which Joe and I get the chance to work together on a whole host of issues. Quite literally yesterday, he was in my conference room in my Philadelphia office working on another issue that would have important regional impact. I share that with you because that provides a backdrop, some context for why we gather here today in a hot parking lot in the Lehigh Valley in front of a couple of Lanta buses at this wonderful healthcare facility. Because the good folks here at Jefferson, and Joe certainly understand how all of this fits together. If you can't get where you're going, the economy can't hum along. If you can't get where you're going, your kids won't have as much time with their parents. If you can't get where you're going, you're going to be less productive in your daily lives. And so today, we're here to make sure that Pennsylvanians have the ability to get where they need to go. You know, it wasn't too long ago in a more rural part of Pennsylvania in Lancaster County, I was opening up a new bridge, the Rife Run Bridge there, more rural community than where we find ourselves here today. And we had concluded the event, and I spoke to a mom who was there who came over to thank me for making sure we got that bridge reopened. It allowed her to get home to her kids more quickly. It allowed her to get to work more quickly. And she just wanted to come out and say thank you for the fact that our administration got that done. By the way, fun fact, I'm proud of the fact that we've repaired more bridges than any other state in the entire country right here in Pennsylvania. That mom was grateful because of the investments we've made in infrastructure here in Pennsylvania. There are moms here in the Lehigh Valley that need to get to work, need to get home to their kids, need to be able to get here to the Lehigh Valley Health Network either for work or if, God forbid, they've got a health ailment that needs to get addressed. This mom here in the Lehigh Valley matters just as much as that mom in Lancaster County. And it's time our Commonwealth invest in all of the above when it comes to infrastructure. I'm here today to talk about our commitment to investing in mass transit and to talk about the dire consequences in the Lehigh Valley if we don't. Lanta does a great job getting people moving around the valley, and particularly as the valley is growing, and we're bringing more and more economic development to this region with the partnership of so many others. We need more investment in mass transit, not less. I have proposed for the last 3 years a funding stream that would go directly to mass transit, ensuring that our buses here and our trains and trolleys and subways elsewhere would have adequate funding to be able to get that mom where she needs to go, that student, that employee, you name it. And that funding has been passed 3 times by the House of Representatives. We're joined today by several members of your delegation who you're going to hear from in a few moments. Unfortunately, each time the House passed that legislation, which would fully fund mass transit here in Atlanta and all across Pennsylvania. He went over to the Senate, and notwithstanding the pleas of Senator Miller and Senator Boscola, the Senate never brought it up. Last year, I flexed some funding to allow our mass transit agencies to be able to continue to June 30th of this year. But there's no more quick fixes. There's no more ways around it. It's time for the legislature, and in particular the Senate of Pennsylvania, to act and to fund our mass transit, to fund it for those moms that need to get home for their kids, to fund it for our businesses that rely on mass transit. Mass transit has a $5.4 billion, that's a B, billion dollar economic impact here in the Valley and all across Pennsylvania. It is good business decision to invest in mass transit. It's good business decision to make sure folks have the buses they need to get where they need to go. My proposal is still on the table. The House is prepared to pass it again. It's time for the Senate to pass it as well. They've asked me if I would consider marrying up funding for roads and bridges with it. Of course, we want to do more funding for roads and bridges. They've asked us to consider all kinds of different funding streams for it, and I've said yes to each and every one of them. The time for delay and inaction is over. The time for action is now. CEOs from all across Pennsylvania are calling on the Senate of Pennsylvania to act and to pass mass transit funding. This is a smart, wise business decision, and it's time to get it done. If we don't get it done now, Atlanta's going to have to cut at least one of the routes that serves this hospital. They'll have a 20% cut in their service. It'll be devastating for communities all across Pennsylvania. I know that Secretary Carroll, who leads PennDOT, understands this. You'll hear from him in a moment. And I know he works with a network of leaders from mass transit all across Pennsylvania, including Owen O'Neill from right here in Atlanta. He knows how devastating it will be if the legislature doesn't step up. The good news is, here in the Lehigh Valley, you are blessed with a delegation that understands this, that understands the connection between what happens in our centers of commerce, like this hospital behind us, and the need to fund mass transit. And so I want to invite up Owen to talk a little bit more about the effect on Atlanta. I want to thank your delegation for being here today, for being prepared to vote yes, and I want to encourage all lawmakers to come to the table to get this funding for mass transit done. This is critically important for business. It's critically important for Pennsylvania. Owen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Good morning. I just want to take one quick minute just to introduce someone who's here with us today, Jesse Santiago. I think he might be sitting on the bus, actually, or is Jesse around? Jesse is one of our Atlanta bus operators, so there he is. And he's also the current president of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 956, which represents Atlanta bus operators and maintenance employees.
Jesse, come on up here while Owen's talking.
All right. Yeah, and it's people like Jesse who get all those people to work every day until their medical appointments. So I would like to thank Governor Shapiro and Secretary Carroll for being here today, and especially thank the governor for his leadership and advocacy for a transit funding solution. For the third year in a row, the governor has put forth a funding solution for public transportation service throughout Pennsylvania, and I want to emphasize throughout. Transit service covers every corner of Pennsylvania's 67 counties, and this funding proposal will help all of them. Here in the Lehigh Valley, transit is provided by Atlanta. We operate fixed-route bus and door-to-door paratransit service, carrying roughly 4.5 million passenger trips annually. While ridership figures are important, there are some other key indicators that shape our reality at Atlanta every day. Since 2010, the Lehigh Valley has grown by 50,000 people, 65,000 jobs, 70% growth in GDP, and 48 million square feet of warehouse and industrial space. Continuing to provide effective and convenient transit service in that environment has been challenging, and here at Atlanta we have tried to keep up. But if we don't act on the governor's funding proposal, not only will we not keep pace, but we will be forced to drastically reduce service and go backwards at the worst possible time for our region and the Commonwealth. These cuts could include 20% service reductions this year and an additional 20 to 30% next year. Service restrictions on ADA paratransit and shared ride services, and fare increases of up to 30% on all services. At an event last year in the Lehigh Valley, rolling out the statewide economic development strategy, Governor Shapiro said that the state's strategy is, quote, betting heavily on continued economic growth in the Lehigh Valley. But that would be a losing bet if people can't get to the jobs that we are looking to create. In a recent survey, we asked our riders to name all of the purposes for which they use Lanta service, and the most common answer was work. 75% of Lanta riders said they use our transit system to get back and forth to work. Another 21% said they use it to get back and forth to school. And without transit, that stops. While much of Lanta service area is characterized by urban centers and densifying suburbs, we also serve rural areas in northern Northampton and Lehigh counties. And many people don't know this, but Lanta also runs the transit service in Carbon County. We can tell you firsthand that transit service is just as important, if not more important, in the rural areas of our region than it is in the urban ones. From an economic standpoint, transit has played a key role in Carbon County over the past 2 years through special services that connected satellite parking locations with downtown Jim Thorpe during fall foliage weekends. Last fall, those routes carried 4,000 visitors to Jim Thorpe, enhancing the visitor experience and allowing Carbon County to continue to build on the tourism industry, which is a key component of their economic strategy. And beyond economic benefits, our bus and paratransit services in Lehigh, Northampton, and Carbon counties connect people with medical appointments, dialysis, chemotherapy, mental health services, groceries and farmers markets, and opportunities for socialization, which are so important for seniors, persons with disabilities, or persons who experience isolation. I noted earlier that we carry 4.5 million people every year. We focus a lot on the total ridership number, but I always remind myself that each one of those rides is an individual with a unique story, making a unique trip, and each one of them would not have made that trip if not for transit. On behalf of Lanta and the Lanta Board of Directors, we strongly encourage the support of the Governor's transit funding proposal. It would help transit riders and communities right here in the Lehigh Valley. I also want to thank again the Governor for his leadership on this issue. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce PennDOT Secretary Mike Carroll. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thanks so much.
Okay.
Good to see you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Mike Carroll, the PennDOT Secretary. I'm thrilled to be here today with Governor Shapiro and their Lanta friends and leaders from across the Lehigh Valley. And I'll start my remarks with a simple question. Which of your children is your favorite? I'll talk about two of PennDOT's children today. We'll come back to that question in just a minute. Pennsylvania's economic growth relies on our ability to build out a transportation network that puts our tradespeople to work, strengthens our businesses, and improves lives across this Commonwealth. In the first 2 years of the Governor's administration, we delivered over $380 million in new funding for roads and bridges across Pennsylvania. In 2003, as the Governor said, Pennsylvania repaired more poor condition bridges than any state in the nation. And PennDOT and our industry partners repaired thousands and thousands of miles of roadway across the Lehigh Valley and Pennsylvania. But, and here's the but, we must meet everyone's needs. To grow our economy and our communities, our infrastructure and public transit systems must both be properly funded. It's a critical service, as Owen just said. On average, 65% of PA's fixed route users say they have no other option to get where they need to go. Nearly 3/4 of the people using Lanta have no other option. That's why the Governor's budget makes an unprecedented investment in mass transit across Pennsylvania's 67 counties. We have been here before. The Governor proposed this solution last year. And as the Governor said, the House acted on the proposal 3 separate times. Unfortunately, the Senate did not. So Governor Shapiro and our Democratic legislators secured last June an $80 million stopgap that bought us the time necessary to get to this June 30th. This year, the Governor again proposed the first significant transit investment in over a decade, nearly $300 million for transit systems across Pennsylvania, every county. We need our legislature and the Senate to meet Pennsylvanians' current and future transit needs, just like we improve roads and bridges in every community. To give an idea of transit in Pennsylvania, last year Pennsylvania's transit agencies provided over 260 million fixed route trips, 260 million. 25 million of those were senior trips, including millions and millions of trips in rural Pennsylvania. And as has been said, we have shared ride in every county in this Commonwealth, including the smallest counties of the small. Sullivan, and Forest counties with 3,000 and 4,000 people have transit. They need the funding just as Atlanta does. No matter the service type, transit providers are dealing with workforce challenges as well and rising costs. So this investment offered by the governor would help stabilize and advance service, because otherwise the choices are to raise fares or cut services or both. Shared ride supports our seniors' quality of life and powers our economy. Fixed routes often get people to work and school. It provides opportunities across the board no matter where you live. I cannot overstate the Shapiro administration's commitment to Pennsylvanians, and that includes safe, reliable public transit. I'm proud to stand here today and advocate for this proposal and include transit funding in this year's budget. And by the way, the question I asked earlier of which of your children is your favorite, of course we all know the answer to that question. All of them, just as it is for PennDOT and our modes of transportation. Governor, thank you for your leadership. Thank you to everyone for being here today. I'm happy to invite a person who needs no invitation in the Lehigh Valley, Tony Iannelli, to come to the podium. Tony.
Good job.
There you go.
Thanks.
You got it.
Go get him, Tony.
Okay, Tony.
Let me get my speech out, Governor, very quickly.
Oh, boy.
Yeah,
Tony's wearing my blazer here today.
I tell people this is my 250 blazer, but I literally bought this in Florida at a used clothing store for $2.50. So I just thought I'd let it out there. But
All right.
I'm also thinking I lost almost over 50 pounds, and I look at you. You look amazing.
Let's stay with the notes.
All
here,
right,
Tony.
all
Go ahead.
right, all right. Real quick. I want to start with Owen. Real quickly, when I ran the Business Improvement District in Allentown years ago, I got involved with Atlanta. And at that time, Atlanta was moving people blocks. And I mean a lot of blocks, but blocks. And now you're moving people miles. And it's because we've had this amazing expansion in the Lehigh Valley. And I thought to myself also as I was driving up in this beautiful building and what Dr. Cashone talked about, that this is opportunity. And there are many people that need and want opportunity. They want to employ families. They want to lift families up. And Governor, this commitment is going to allow opportunity to meet need, where people can find their jobs, get to their jobs, and create legacies for their family. So we applaud this amazing effort. It's unbelievable. I also want to say quickly before I go, Governor, I've been here, today by the way is my 27th anniversary at the Chamber. So, I've been here for a long time, and I've never ever seen a governor yet, and I loved all of them, but have been here as much as you have. So I think the business community appreciates what you're doing. I think we appreciate the fact that let's talk about a win-win. We need people. We need employees. Employees need opportunity, and this helps develop that match. So thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I want to invite Nancy up to say a few words. Come on up, Nancy. Thank you. Thank you very much. You too. You too.
Well, good morning, everyone. I see you're all warm and hot. On behalf of Workforce Board Lehigh Valley and PA Career Link System, which is your workforce system, I'm here today to speak on behalf of job seekers as well as employers across our region who are struggling to find skilled and available talent. Reliable public transportation is not just about mobility. It's really about economic connections. It connects workers to jobs, students to training, and parents to childcare. But just as importantly, it connects businesses to the workforce they need to grow. Governor Shapiro gets that. He gets it. He has prioritized rebuilding the infrastructure that keeps Pennsylvania moving forward, and he has proposed the largest funding for public transportation in over a decade. Yippee.
Yippee.
These investments recognize that when we can link Pennsylvania workers to Pennsylvania business, we all thrive. In our cities and boroughs and rural communities alike, many Lehigh Valley residents rely on public transportation to get to their jobs. And if those systems fail, our workforce shrinks. It's shrinking. Not because people don't want to work, which sometimes we all think, but because they can't get there. They can't get there. Recently, we celebrated a local veteran who was able to find employment. When he began working with us, he had no driver's license, he had no car, and no steady income. But he was able to receive a job offer, because he had skills. But the only reason he could say yes to that job was because he could catch a bus to get to it. We don't appreciate that because we get in our cars and go. Another participant trying to complete HVAC training, which we really need in the Lehigh Valley, at one of our 2 community colleges, his car broke down and was only able to stay in the program because of public transit. He got there every day. We often hear from single parents who take 2 or even 3 buses to drop their kids off at daycare before heading to work. They have to negotiate the system, often from rural locations and through the multiple transfer locations. I don't think I could even do that. I'm Polish. They aren't exceptions. They're examples of what's at risk. Without strong investments in mass transit, these stories don't end in success. They end in lost opportunities for individuals and employers and for our economy. Governor Shapiro's latest budget proposal is the largest such proposal in over a decade. We can't expect business to grow with their employees can't get to work. We can't close a labor gap if talent is stranded, and we can't build a thriving economy if our transportation infrastructure leaves large portions behind. Public transit is a workforce infrastructure. It's a business infrastructure. It's a community infrastructure. Let's treat it like it matters, because it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Normally we leave the jokes to Schloss, but we appreciate you taking a swing. I did tell him not to. We're going to hear from our lawmakers now from the region. First, Senator Boscola, then Senator Miller, Representative Freeman, Representative Sammy, and then, of course, we'll hear from Chairman Schweier and Representative Schlossberger. So in that order, Senator Boscola.
Thank you. Hi. You're here
Get 'em.
again,
We're
like
here
Tony
again.
said, you know, again and again and again. And so I think you officially get the title, the first governor from the Lehigh Valley.
I love that.
You
I
are.
love that.
That is the truth. Anyway, and why I say that is because we are not going to get mass transit funding in Harrisburg without his leadership. I'm serious about that because the Senate wasn't really serious about taking up this bill or enhancing funding for mass transit until the governor made it a priority. And some of the House members that are sitting here and some of the Senate members are also making it a priority as one of the top budget priorities moving forward. And that matters because instead of 20 priorities, we have one right now that the Democrats especially are trying to promote, and that's funding for mass transit. I know how important it is. Look, we talk about the Lehigh Valley being the 3rd largest metropolitan area in the state, right? Well, we're thriving and we continue to thrive. What we won't unless we have funding for transportation systems. And that's not just including roads, bridges. This is an important part of our infrastructure moving forward. And you can't, like was said, you can't get to work, you can't get to your doctor's appointments, you can't do a lot of things without our mass transit system. The only thing I would say is that, I don't know if the governor knows this, but I had a bill in that would say when we look at transit funding, we really have to look at our growing areas like the Lehigh Valley and try to support them a little bit more with a funding formula that makes sense for the whole state. Anyway, thank you again for
Thank you,
being
Senator.
here. And I know
Thank
Nick's
you.
up. He's
Thank
my
you.
fave.
Hey, Senator. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Governor, and thank you, Senator Boscola. First of all, I want to thank you for coming back to Lehigh Valley. As mentioned before, it's the fastest growing region in the Commonwealth, and preparing for that growth, being strategic and thoughtful, that's exactly what this budget proposal is, and being mindful of all the different folks that have to get to their jobs every day, or dialysis and healthcare and access. You know, I can't help but think when I look at these buses behind me, we recently visited a Mack truck, and Representative Schweier was driving an 18-wheeler, pretty scary sight. But another large employer here in the Lehigh Valley that needs a workforce that can get to those jobs and those family-sustaining jobs over not just years but decades here in the Lehigh Valley. We're happy to support that across the Commonwealth. You know, I was just in Pittsburgh talking about their Pittsburgh Regional Transit, making sure that we're being thoughtful on how we're making these investments across the state. So I want to thank the governor and his team again for being thoughtful and strategic in this budget proposal, and we'll continue to fight here in June and get this budget done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and I thank the governor again for being present, as he is so often here in the Lehigh Valley, and for this important announcement, and for his leadership on behalf of public transportation in particular, and the leadership of our business community. Tony is a good representative of that. This truly has broad-based support, and it's something we need to do. You cannot emphasize enough how important public mass transit is to the people of the Lehigh Valley, as well as across the state. It's taken by individuals who depend upon it for work, to get to school, for medical appointments, and even to access groceries. You know, a lot of our transit riders live in urban areas that are food deserts. Their only access to fresh fruit sometimes can either be a farmer's market in the community or on a regular basis having bus service out to the supermarkets that exist in the suburbs. It literally is a lifeline for many people. We should not forget that. It is a lifeline to get to the places they need to go to sustain themselves and their families. And as Secretary Carroll pointed out, 3/4 of the people who take mass transit have no other means of getting around. Imagine being isolated with no way of getting to the basic necessities of life within your community. Mass transit has other benefits as well. It helps to cut down pollution, it helps to cut down traffic congestion, all of which are beneficial to our area. The funding crisis for mass transit affects all of our systems in the state. It's not just a big city issue. And as we noted, Atlanta does an outstanding job for our Lehigh Valley riders. And it's critical that they get funding as they face 20% cuts in service. We can't let that happen. House Bill 1364, of which I am a co-sponsor, would provide $292 million without raising taxes by using existing amounts of sales tax revenue transferred to those public transportation trusts, increasing it from the current 4.4% to 6.15%. And that means that it would be a total of $1.5 billion in funding over a 5-year period. That's a difference that matters. So the House has passed this legislation as the past has been mentioned 3 times in the past, and the Republican-controlled Senate has yet to act. We urge them to act when we send over House Bill 1364, which we are poised to do very shortly in the House. It will run in the House shortly. And the Senate needs to act to send it to the governor's desk to get his signature. The time to act is now. We cannot stand idly by, and idling and buses do not go together. So we need to move forward and make this a reality.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve Samuelson from the 135th District. I also want to acknowledge some of our other elected officials are here. We have Northampton County Executive Lamont McClure. We have Easton Mayor Sal Panto and Northampton County Commissioner Jeff Warren. So thank you for being here today. As the governor said, economic development depends on the employees and the businesses. It is so interconnected, and mass transit is part of every single conversation. One of my roles in Harrisburg, I'm chair of the Finance Committee. We've had a couple bills this year. One would benefit working moms and working dads. It's called the Working Pennsylvanians Tax Credit. It's promoted by the United Way of Pennsylvania. It would benefit 802,000 Pennsylvanians. These are working families who are trying to make ends meet. They're paying the bills, they're getting to their jobs, and many of the folks, many of those Alice households use mass transit to get to their jobs. We passed that bill in the committee, we passed it in the House, we sent it to the Senate. Last month, we voted on a bill called the EDGE program, Economic Development for a Growing Economy. We're talking about many economic incentives that Governor Shapiro is promoting. We're talking about reliable energy, we're talking about hydrogen, we're talking about aviation, we're talking about dairy, we are talking about geothermal, and we're talking about semiconductor incentives, including semiconductor incentives that would benefit companies right here in the Lehigh Valley. So when you think about it, the employees getting to work, the employers relying on the Lehigh Valley's awesome workforce, everyone depends on transit. So I like how Nancy Dishnot put it, this is economic connections. And I want to close by quoting the words of a great American, I might edit the words a little bit, a great American, Tony Iannelli, who said, businesses need employees, employees need opportunity, and everyone needs transit. It's now my honor to introduce one of our House leaders. He's the Majority Whip of the House Representatives. He's from Allentown, and it's Mike Schlossberg.
Thank you, Steve. Good to see you guys. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mike Schlossberg, aka Schlossie, Schlossberger, whatever works. I have the honor of serving the people of Allentown West and also serving my colleagues in the Majority Whip. Now, don't tell this to anybody, and really for your sake, but I spent 5.5 years working for the Greater Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce. In fact, I am largely the fault of Tony Iannelli, and Tony, maybe you don't want to tell people on the Board of Governors that. But I, in all sincerity, learned a lot working for the Chamber of Commerce, which is obviously an organization that's deeply invested in Lehigh Valley community, in our workforce, and in our businesses. And during the course of many meetings, many text messages, and many emails, I gleaned quite a bit from Tony Iannelli. One of the things that always stuck with me in terms of how businesses and government really do have a lot of overlap is this. No business in the history of humanity has cut their way to prosperity. No business has ever been successful in the long run without investing in itself. Mass transit is about more than just a ride. Mass transit is the engine that powers the entire Lehigh Valley community. Some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle talk about making sure that we can get that their businesses have the right amount of employers, that businesses have customers as we continue to evolve in a post-COVID world. How do we expect people to get to work without giving them the opportunity to do so? 3 times my colleagues and I in the House of Representatives have voted to send the mass transportation package that the governor supports that would keep Pennsylvania and Lehigh Valley moving to the Senate. And 3 times they have said no. Due no fault, of course, to Senators Boscola and Miller. It is time, if we truly care about the economy, that we invest in it appropriately. It is time, if we truly care about getting people to work, about keeping people gainfully employed and off of the taxpayer dole, that we actually ensure that they can get from point A to point B. We must pass this transportation package and ensure that Pennsylvania's economy and the Lehigh Valley's economy can continue growing. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Chairman Pete Schweier.
So for 13 years, I had the opportunity to serve as a member of the board of directors of LANTA. I learned a ton from Owen. I learned a ton from Becky Bradley, who's here. I also see our colleague, Josh Siegel, who was able to join us today. Josh, glad to see you here as a huge transit supporter himself. And I learned a lot from, like I said, I learned a lot from Owen. I learned a lot from Becky. I learned a lot from so many folks in transit. And the van over my left shoulder is often used to transport people that have significant medical concerns. Maybe you have a loved one who has to go to a dialysis center just to be able to carry on with their life and live as good of a life as they can. But quite often that dialysis patient who arrives in the van over my left shoulder is cared for by somebody who arrives in the bus over my right shoulder. This is not a story just about economic development. This isn't just a story about business. This is a story about human beings and the things that we need to make sure that folks have the things that they need to be able to live a good and normal life that we would ask for anybody. And the entire loop, that entire system of transportation, whether they're arriving in a car, to Secretary Carroll's point, over a brand new bridge that under the Shapiro administration was just repaired, or if they're arriving in a van over there, if they're going to work over in a bus over our right shoulder, it all accomplishes the same goal, which is keeping business moving, keeping our economy flowing, and allowing our region and our entire Commonwealth to grow. And I join with my colleagues in supporting this legislation and calling on the Senate, with no fault of our friends, both Senator Boscola, who I also worked for, along with Steve Samuelson, and my friend Senator Nick Miller, to get the Senate moving, maybe taking a page from PennDOT and actually moving things forward. So I appreciate everyone for joining us today. And Governor Shapiro, I'll turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So we've learned today that we learned 2 things. One, that all roads lead back to Senator Boscola and Tony Iannelli. Y'all can debate whether that's a good thing or bad thing. And 2, we've learned just how critically important mass transit is for the businesses that exist today and the promise of business development and growth tomorrow. You know how aggressive we've been on economic development. You know we're putting points on the board like never before. Don't slow that progress down by failing to invest in mass transit. This is our moment. I want to thank all of these lawmakers who are here, who are prepared to vote yes again. I want to thank the business leaders who have been here, and I'll close by particularly thanking Dr. Joe Cashone and the team here at Jefferson. You do a great job saving lives, and you are great civic leaders as well. You understand your responsibility to a community, and I'm grateful that you're here today stepping up to support mass transit. So thank you very much, and with that, we'll take a couple questions from the media if you have any.
While we're on mass transit, kind of shifting gears a little bit, but 26 morning. SEPTA is already struggling as it is. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, these were buses that were not in use. I know Secretary Carroll and law enforcement are working on the investigation now. I think they'll have more to say later in the day. Anything else? Nope. Okay, one more, yes.
$360 million is a huge price tag. I know I'm going to have viewers watching this tonight wondering, can the state truly afford that?
Yeah, the state can afford it. We've got a surplus. I've proposed historic investments in really the same three areas I've been focused on like a laser beam as governor: education, public safety, economic development. Mass transit and our roads and bridges are a key driver of economic development. I also think we can cut taxes at the same time. Unlike the chaos in Washington, we've got fiscal calm here at home in Pennsylvania. We can afford to cut taxes, make critical investments, and continue to have a surplus and have a balanced budget. We could do all of those things if we continue to do what has marked really the first couple of years of my time as governor: work in a bipartisan manner to solve problems and get stuff done. All right? Thank you all very, very much.